cultural domination ranking tables, you will find these numbers, right, representing different cultural aspects of American and Chinese culture. So, so what can you tell from this number? For instance, you know that these numbers, they are comparative in a sense, right? If you just look at the first indicator, power distance, you can see the United States 40 and China 80. So what do they mean? What can you tell from the number, the difference here? Yes?
The U.S. has a relatively lower power distance, so there's not that much vertical space between hierarchy versus China that has a relatively high, pretty high power distance, so that means maybe more hierarchical, or there's just a greater space between like managers and
Yeah, exactly. So if you compare with Americans, right, Chinese, they tend to accept their society, like you just said, as well hierarchical, and with power imbalance among their people. And people know their places in their societal system and understand they have no power in terms of making decisions for the group. Okay. This is the first indicator. Then what about the other pair numbers telling you? We've got 6 indicators here, but if you just look at this number, you will see that it seems there's not much difference in masculinity and uncertainty avoidance. Okay? So I think there's no point to highlight a cultural difference here. But what about the other 3, individualism, long-term, and indulgence? Let's look at the individualism. What does it tell you? Especially, this has the huge difference here, right? So we know that America represents 91 and China got 20. What does it mean? Yes?
I think that's like about the freewheeling style, because in China they're not really used to take the decisions by themselves. Usually someone would take like the decision maybe for the group, and after that the group will act regarding like the decision that were made. So yes, I think like that's a big contradiction between like these 2 cultures.
Yeah, Chinese culture tends to be group-oriented, right? Of course, American culture is the most individualistic country in the list. Okay. And what about the long-term versus short-term oriented? You see that United States got number 26 and China got 87. Obviously, Chinese culture is much long-term oriented, planning for the future. And compared with Chinese culture, Americans tend to be short-term and look at the present, right? And also the last one, indulgence. What does it mean? We got 68 versus 24. Anyone to share? Yes, please.
indulgence more so refers to kind of like the degree of like restraint that you have for the things that you want to do.
Yes.
So this case would be relatively China would have higher restraint from like engaging in things that are not necessary. That obviously they're indulging in things that you want to do.
Yes.
Versus the U.S. is a lot more likely and a lot more prone to indulging behaviors, passions, whatever.
So that's a very good comment on that. So in general, I highlighted the major differences here. Just look at the numbers. What are the managerial implications you can draw from? So basically, you know that American culture is less hierarchical, more individualistic, short-term or practical oriented, and more liberal towards work-life balance because they have larger number of indulgence, right? And compared with that, Chinese tend to accept their power imbalance in the society and sacrifice the individual benefit for the greater purpose in the group. And they usually take long-term and more restrained views towards their life. Okay. So then if we reflect the cultural differences from here to the case, okay, then what happened to Google before and after 2010? So any group want to share, especially for instance, what happened before 2010 in the case? Is there any evidence that can support cultural differences between the United States and China? Yes, please.
Before 2010, differences were mainly in the working culture.
Mm-hmm.
But Google had a very open work environment where you before, every time you were working in some of the Chinese companies, had problems with that, because they weren't used to it. And after 2010, it was, the article refers more about the overall societal differences, by Google having the aim to provide every information possible without restricting it, and not being used to being made responsible for the information it provides. Whereas in China, it's rather seen that the search engine that provides information should be responsible for it, and information that is not good for the society shouldn't be found.
So are you surprised to see that Chinese cultures look in information like that? Because I don't know, what if in your culture you believe that giving all information to the people basically is a human right? But in China, it's not. It's the other way around. They believe that if you give all information to the public, you need to take responsibility for that, especially for the search engine itself, right? For instance, what if there's someone, some kid from somewhere search online about 100 ways to suicide? Then, of course, Google, they need to provide responsibility for that. So, but it's the other way around, the other Western culture, of course. Right? So, I think, especially in the second case about what happened after 2010, they got more evidence about the cultural difference, especially two ways, right? The first is about the search engine itself, okay? Access to all information is not a human right in China, obviously. And secondly, Google needs to be responsible for the information it provides, okay? So, of course, there are a lot of clashes, not only limited to the cultural differences, but in terms of institutional differences, right? The legal, the political framework between the two countries. And especially in the first case, you talk about some bribery issue. If you give the free gift to a government official, I think it's quite common in most of the Chinese culture. It means that you are treating them very good with the respect. But if you do so in most of the Western culture, obviously it will be perceived as the bribery behavior. But it doesn't necessarily mean that in the Western culture you can't give the gift to your client. Obviously you can, but you need to apply for the allowance from the company in advance. Okay, so that's the major difference here. And so you can see that in 2010, why the year of 2010? Because in 2010 Google left China and it re-entered China in the same year. And obviously it found that it can't afford to miss out the world's largest internet market then. Okay. And the top management has softened its position and seeking to introduce the new services in China, especially artificial intelligence or maybe the data mining service, not really the search engine service, because they now moved the search engine service to Hong Kong without a censorship. Okay. But still, you've read the case, its operation in China have been under lots of pressure from the government and still struggling to adjust its American culture to the Chinese way of thinking and behavior, especially in the business contexts. And Google's experience in China basically demonstrates the importance of culture in international business contexts. In particular, especially for those firms who wants to operate in a culturally distant country, you need to bear in mind what would be the influences, especially negative impact of culture on the international business activities. And you know that if you look at the Chinese culture specifically, you know that Chinese culture, they have the collectivist mindset, group-oriented, and which emphasize the conformity, duty, prescribed roles, and the sacrifice for the greater goods. And we all know that family are the center of the Chinese culture, so the family style management often can be seen in the organizational structure or organizational management style. So the leaders, they concern for subordinates' happiness and it takes personal relationship very seriously. For instance, when they hire people, usually through connection, not really. Of course, they are looking for the talents, but at the same time, if you've got a connection with them, they will put you as a priority. Okay. And also, Chinese are long-term oriented and invest much time in planning the business venture. They emphasize the patience, respect for traditions, and hard work. So compared with Western culture, most Chinese, they tend to be seen as a workaholic. And they avoid the conflicts and favors societal harmony. Okay, so in China, relationship, I think, is the most important thing, influence on commercial activities, organizational behaviors. Okay. So a further case, you know how to utilize the Hostile Culture Dimensional Indices to assess the differences in terms of culture between two countries. And I take China and United States as example very often because that's the the things that you can look for online by yourself are much more easy. And there are a lot of studies talk about the cultural differences between these two giant countries. And so far, if we learn two different approaches to assess cultural differences, the one, I don't know if you remember that one is the Professor Edward Hall proposed the high context versus low context culture, right? And the second one is the Professor Steve, cultural dimensions. Okay? But you know it's not full story. Okay? There are other cultural dimensions which are often important to assess the phenomena, such as the different culture. Obviously, they have different values and attitudes, and different deal versus relationship or attention in terms of business relationship, and also different manners and customs and perception of time and space. We'll talk about in the first lecture. I give you some examples about my Indonesian friend. When you had a meeting with them, make sure they arrive on time, 30 minutes later. Okay, that's the norm of their culture. And we also talk about different dressing and business meeting styles. Of course, there are many more. Okay. But this indicates that you can't just put a particular culture into typology and say that you have known all aspects of it. Very often people ignore the invisible elements in one's culture, such as time and space, and even the facial expressions, body languages, right, and also gestures. They can lead to cross-cultural chaos. Okay, so here I give you 4 gestures I look for online and see what do they mean across different culture. The first one is like this. Yes, the OK sign. What does it mean in your culture? For instance, in Taiwan, it means satisfactory, right? What about in your culture? What does it mean? It means the same thing? Yes? Yes, yes, yes. But I don't know if anyone from Brazil or any friend from Brazil. It means the other way around. It means we're actually cursing someone as an asshole. Okay, so don't do that. Okay. And also the second sign is this one, the home sign. Okay, what does it mean? You often can be seen in music videos in the concert, right? It means rock and roll, right? What does it mean, right? But in Italy, Portugal, and Spain, it means the other thing. I don't know if you know about that. It means that if you show this gesture to someone else, it means that it's telling you that your wife is cheating on you. And the third gesture is like this. You put all your fingers all together. What do they mean? For instance, what do they mean? First, doesn't tell means just a little bit. Just a little. What about in German or maybe in France? What does it mean? It's really good. So yeah, probably it's very good or it's something very fabulous or something. So something's beautiful, for instance, in Turkey, things like that. And in Italy means that what do you want? Okay, what do you want? And in Morocco it means that you need to be quiet. You are too loud. Okay. And the final one, what does it mean? Cross fingers. Usually, yeah, hope for something, wish you could luck, right? But you don't do that in Vietnam, okay, in Southeastern Asia, because it means the female body parts, okay, very personal part, okay, don't do that. So just give you some examples here just to let you know that in addition to the cultural differences we talked about earlier, in terms of national culture, body languages, eye contact, and the facial expression, even a gesture can mean different things across different cultures. Okay. And the last slide about it's about academic point of view. I know most of you are postgraduate level students, right? And probably you are interested in conducting research in your dissertation relating cross-cultural issues. Okay? And this is a very useful and dominant database in cultural studies. But you know that many people still use HOSTIP, cultural dimension indexes, to assess cultural differences. I use it in my earlier publication too. But HOSTIP model has been criticized mainly due to lack of longitudinal data. Okay? As you know, culture is an enduring orientation in a society. Therefore, mixing data may result in very biased research findings. So nowadays, many researchers, they have used the GLOBE project, okay, to compensate the flows of HOSTIP data, not only because GLOBE project has the world's largest database across the national culture, societal effectiveness, and desirable leadership attributes. So if you're interested in national organizational culture, it's a database you need to use. but also it is an ongoing research since 2004. Okay, so it has 9 cultural dimensions, as you can see on the slide, covering 150 countries' data for free access online. So if you're interested, you can look for more information about the data by yourself. Okay, this is very useful if you want to do the comparison between different countries in terms of cross-cultural studies. Okay. So I also listed the project website for information. Okay. And to continue the discussion on the role of culture in international business contexts, well, I think it would be better if we can firstly introduce the basic concept of international business, right? Given that many of you have no relevant backgrounds of international business. Okay. And the very first question to talk about is the definitions of international business. Okay. What I'm going to do is that I'm not going to tell you directly what does it mean by international business. I'm going to show you a 6 minutes video. Okay. And the video is concerning about the global value chain in East Asia countries, illustrating the various dimensions of international business activities. So what you need to do now is pay attention to the video and maybe take a pen or piece of paper, maybe you keep your notes on your electronic devices to find the keywords that you think are relating to international business as many as you can. Okay? And don't worry if you can't get any, because we're going to have a discussion altogether afterwards. Okay? If you're ready, we can start watching the video now. Okay, so what are the keywords you found that relating to international business? Yes. Outsourcing, offshoring. Okay, what does it mean? What do they mean? Obviously, it's two different strategies, right? For instance, what is outsourcing? Yes. And what about offshoring?
The company you place the order on is overseas or something.
Okay, so maybe some of you are kind of confused about the terminologies. Yes.
Offshoring is when you do it yourself, but the subsidiary in a different country, and outsourcing is if you buy it from somebody else.
Exactly. So basically, the main model of offshoring or outsourcing are basically the same. For instance, take an example of a company. Maybe the cost reduction is the internationalization model. Okay, and you can either choose outsourcing or offshoring. Or for instance, outsourcing means the company moves some part of its, for instance, production line to another company located abroad. Okay, and offshoring means the company moves some of the production line again, but to its subsidiaries in foreign countries. So the major differences here is that whether the company still maintain the ownership and management of its production line or assets abroad. If yes, then it is doing offshoring. Then if not, it's doing outsourcing, respectively. Okay. And what are the other keywords?
Cross-border.
Cross-border, of course, means cross-border trade, right? What else? Sorry, anyone saying something?
Industrial revolution.
Industrial revolution, especially we got 3 stages: pre-industrialized, first industrialized, and post-industrialized. But now we are in the maybe in the later stage, right? Okay, what? Any other? Yes.
Foreign direct investment.
Foreign direct investments. Yes. Okay. Anything? Specialization. What do you think is related to international business?
So it's like based on every part has their competitive advantage. So
Yeah, comparative advantage. You've seen that in the video. So every country they have their own comparative advantage, so they can trade with each other with a lower costs, right, or higher efficiency. For instance, in Taiwan, we're very good at electronic components, right? And for instance, in America, maybe we're very good at service trade in terms of international franchising, okay? And for instance, in Germany, probably manufacturing cars would be one of your comparative advantages. So every country, they have their own comparative advantage. So now the global supply chain is kind of the phenomenon of the company fine slicing their production parts from one country to another country in order to lower down their overall costs. Okay. What about the other keywords? Have you seen any keywords? For instance, intermediate goods. Okay. So what are intermediate goods? Because in the video it says that intermediate goods are not dominant the global value chain, right? Intermediate goods essentially, yes.
Well, if you take the car, then the car is the final good, and the doors, the odometer, those are the intermediate goods. But if you're, for example, a company that produces odometers, the dial would be intermediate.
Yeah, exactly. So it's basically the unfinished product would be called as an intermediate goods. Okay. So they are many of the intermediate goods are now shared with each other through global value chain. Okay. And it's in the picture like this, right? So the video, the whole thing is made in the world. So obviously this is one of the keywords. So you can see that the airplane, each component is actually sourced from different countries. So it's really difficult to tell that which country is made from which countries right now. So these are the keywords you've probably already seen in the video. Okay, and many of them are representative for different dimensions of international business activities. Okay. So if we look at the definition from the textbook, okay, mainly use the concept in the following from a dominant IB textbook. Okay, so international business is defined as the performance of trade and investment activities by foreigners across national borders. So cross-border is the keywords as well. And for our definition here, I also highlighted two concepts, including international trade and international investments. So we just put a very simple formula for the definitions of international business. I would say that international business is equal to international trade plus international investments. Okay. So what are the international trade and investments respectively? Let's start from the first concept, international trade. Basically, it's the exchange of products and services across national border, typically through exporting and importing. And exporting and importing are rather easy concept. You know, exporting means the producing products, services in one country, often will be your home country, and then you sell or distribute these products, services to customer located abroad. Okay, so for instance, in Taiwan, we produce agricultural fruits and we sell them to overseas customers. It's one of our largest exporting in Taiwan. And contrary to exporting, importing or global sourcing means that procurement of products, services from suppliers located abroad in order to for the consumption in the home country or the third country. So, give you another personal example. For instance, we Taiwanese really fancied about the Japanese sweets, and at least in my case, so increasing consumption of the Japanese sweets from abroad. Therefore, encourage there are many local Taiwanese supermarkets or retailers source imports from the Japanese companies directly. That means importing. Okay. And these are the two charts. They are the most updated statistics from the Ministry of Economic Affairs in Taiwan, displaying up until the year end of 2021. That is the end of last year. So these two are representing Taiwan's leading trading partner countries by total exports and import volumes. Okay. So if you see, regarding Taiwan exporting destination, United States and China, obviously the two main trade partners with us, okay, accounting for nearly half of the total exports. And other important trade partners include European Union and ASEAN, roughly about another 25% in total. But on the other hand, given large volume exporting to the United States and China, Taiwan did not import the same large volume from these two countries. Only about 32% of imports from these two countries. Okay, what does it mean? It means that if we look at a trade dependency perspective, for instance, compared with the Japan and South Korean trade war, we can see that the trade war between the United States and China has posed stronger effects on Taiwan's economy, okay? In particular in exporting more than importing products. But how has Taiwanese economy influenced by the US-China trade war? It's been a very hot topic in recent years in Taiwan. Personally speaking, I would say the positive effects outweighs the negative effects as a result of US-China trade war, okay? Because Taiwan has been doing a lot of OEM and ODM, okay, so we're being outsourced by other Western countries. And then they exporting the intermediate goods, such as electronic components, to these two countries, United States and China. And while high trade barrier become an obvious barrier in exporting to these two countries, or between these two countries, local companies in Taiwan would be benefit from increasing orders placed by their trading partners directly from these two countries. Okay, so in other words, I would say the United States and China would prefer the local production of direct sourcing from Taiwan in order to cut their manufacturing costs and custom duties in terms of import barriers. So they explain why there are many lots of Taiwanese companies relocate their business operations from the United States and China back to Taiwan by the year of 2019, just before the pandemic. Okay. And they were contributing a very good of GDP growth rate, roughly about 2.98% last year, making Taiwan as the leading economic among the four Asian tigers, okay, in Asia Pacific regions. We even surpassed China for the very first time in the past 3 decades. Okay, so we actually benefit from US-China trade war in terms of the direct sourcing from these two countries to Taiwan. Okay. And let's look at the larger picture on the world trade. I just noticed that there were, so let's take a 10 minutes break. Okay, we'll come back to continue to look at this international trade.